Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of the BCH coding tutorial series. So this will be the final episode. So we'll be finishing up our first BCH app. So we'll do some bug fixes and some speed improvements. And after that, we want to deploy our site because currently it's still running on localhost. So we can only access it locally, but we want it available as a website so anyone can navigate to it. So for that, we'll first upload our code to GitHub. So we have it available online. And then we'll use Netlify to deploy from our latest GitHub branch. So then when we make any changes and upload them to GitHub, the Netlify deploy will automatically reflect the latest version on GitHub. So that's a very nice flow with continuous integration. So first off, let's finish our BCH app. So I have two terminal windows open, one running the app by running npm run dev, and then a second one where we can actually do some coding. So first off, let's check the status of where we left off. So we have a bunch of uncommitted changes. So we'll do that first. We'll take a quick look, a recap of what we did last time, and then we'll just commit those changes. So if we take a look here in our editor and source control, we can see that we added a dependency, namely the Electrum cache dependency. Then in app.view, we added a bunch of additional logic using the Electrum client and the Electrum transport to render the list of ninjas. And we also displayed the current block height. And then we did some small styling changes. Of course, in the CSS file, we also made a few small styling changes, namely changing the color. And then lastly, in the NFT item, we added simply a simple width. So all these changes, we can add them and then go back to our terminal. If we do git status, we will see that they're all added. So we can say git commit, and this was of the third coding tutorial. So third tutorial, like that. Oh, third tutorial, and of course we git commit with -m for a message, and we give it the message third tutorial. So then if we move back, all our changes have been committed, and we can start making some new changes for the fourth episode. So first of all, what do we still want to change? Well, if we take a look at the console, here the developer console, we'll see that there's some messages saying invalid prop type, type check failed. So we'll fix this warning. And also what we notice, if we refresh, then our app first shows up in the middle of the screen, and then the whole app changes height because the ninjas load in. So we want to fix this. And we want to improve the speed because currently it displays nothing. You see everything happening in the console, and only then do the ninjas display. So that's what we're going to start doing right now. So to fix the warning that we saw in the console, we will need to navigate to nft-item.view because here it says the NFT number on the NFT item is of the wrong type. So it expected a number, but it got a big int, namely big int 1143 for this ninja. So if we go back and take a look at nft.item, indeed we say NFT number, we expect a number. But if we go to the app.view where we actually pass the props to these NFT items, so back in app.view, you see here we pass the NFT number, which is ninja.nft number we define above. And here in the ninja list, the NFT number that we pass is VM number to big int, so it's of type big int, and we add 1, so another 1n, so another big int. So this type should simply be big int, so this was a mistake. So if we save and refresh, and if it load again, you see we no longer see any warnings in the console. Now what we do see is we see the app jumping. So if we go to inspector, we can see all the items on our page. So here is, for example, the header and then the main item. And so what we need to change to have this jumping no longer occur, for example, if we now remove the main body, have it deleted, then we see the header jumps back down. So this is not what we want, and this is because the body has a flex item. And flex means all items are centered here. It says place items in the center. So if we remove those two, we could only remove the flex, the place items center, but we can also remove both items. So the flex is totally gone. So then we need to edit the CSS. So specifically this line will remove the place items from the CSS. So here in the CSS, so I think it's in assets, in main.css, or in base.css. Let's take a look. We could also do this another way, just search body, and then we have here the two items where it appears. So here body and body. We see here is the item, so we can just remove it, save, and now if we refresh the app, now it stays at the top, and the ninjas are supposed to load at the bottom. So let's retry that. I did a refresh, and then the ninjas load at the bottom, but we saw that there still was some horizontal jumping. So let's try to remove the flex item altogether and refresh. So now it's static, and the ninjas just are coming below, but we still want some margin at the top, so it's not at the very top of the page. So we can, instead of the display flex, we'll add margin top and maybe 50 pixels, and let's see what that looks like. So if we refresh, we see first BCH app, and then there's some loading, and then we see the ninjas. So this is actually already decently fast, but if you would want to benchmark this, we can easily do that. So you would look up how to measure JavaScript execution time. You will find an article like this. So we will just use what they suggest, console.time and console.endtime. So if we use this, console.time, and we go to the place where we actually want to measure. So it's in our app item, because here the rendering happens and all the requests to the Electrum server. So the waiting actually here happens here in the for loop, because for each item, so for each transaction of the recent means, it asks something to the Electrum server and waits. So each time it stops and then it resumes in this loop. So this is what we want to check, how long this takes. So let's take this back, console.time. And here at the end, we do console.time end. And we can put in any string, but it should match at the start and at the end. So it knows which two to match and to measure together. So we'll take a look at the console and refresh our app. So we see everything is loading, and it says here execution time of all these awaits is 1.2 seconds. So not too bad, but we can optimize this. So it's already a bit more advanced, but we'll do it anyway because we want to deploy our app and have it as fast as possible for the user. So what we can do, instead of saying list commitments, we'll just say the name, change the name to list promises. So instead of having the actual commitments already, we just have promises. And instead of the transaction info here, which we await, we will call this transaction info promise. So it's not the actual transaction info, it's a promise that the transaction info will be returned. And then instead of here, list commitment.push commitment, we'll push something, but we don't have the commitment yet. We only have a promise. So we'll use what we just defined. To the list of promises, we will push the transaction info promise. And all these we no longer can use because it's all promises still. But we can move this. So what we will do is, let's ignore this for now. And here we will actually wait for these promises. So we will say we will declare a new constant called transaction infos, for example, of transaction info list is, and now we need to await because these are all promises. And we will await the list of promises. So we say await promise.all. So again, promise.all. So this is how we await a list of promises. And here we expect them all to resolve, but this is okay in our case. And then we have the list of transaction infos. And here we actually want to get the commitments from. So instead of saying const commitment of list commitments, instead we use the transaction info list. So we can say, we define one variable. We say for each transaction info in our list of transaction infos, and then we can use this, what we have above still. So we say for each transaction info, define an NFT commitment, and then we'll use the same naming. So we will call it NFT commitment twice, or yeah, NFT commitment twice. So we say NFT commitment is the transaction info, which we get here, and then we parse it the same as we did before. So these console logs are now useless because transaction info is not defined anywhere here, and NFT commitment is also not defined, so we can just remove those. So again, high level, what did we do? Instead of getting and waiting each time, we have the waiting here. So the await is at the bottom, so it waits only one time. So it has a list of promises. This means it's no longer sequential and waiting at each time, but instead it's asking the server a bunch of things and then waiting once for them all to resolve. And then once we have the finished list of all the transaction infos, then we parse them for the commitments. So this is a better way to do things, and we can compare this by having a look at the execution time. I'm going to save, going back to our app, refresh, and let's see the execution time is 0.15 seconds. So we shaved off a whole second on loading. So again, if we refresh our app, it's much faster now and it feels snappy. So this is of course what we want. One last time. So we can say that the speed improvements were a success. We speeded up the loading by 1 second by just being smart about when we wait. So again, we use this concept called promises. And instead of waiting each time, we made a list of promises, which we called list promises. And then we waited once for the whole list to resolve. And this was the list of all transaction infos. And then instead of the commitments, we now have the transaction info. So we still need to get the actual commitments, the NFT commitments from the individual transaction infos. So this is the speed improvements. And then we also did the styling improvements. So the app is totally finished. We now only need to post it on GitHub and then deploy on Netlify. So that's the next step that we'll do right now. So to actually deploy our project, our first BCH app, to have it not just running on localhost, but on a real website, we first want to get our code on GitHub. And we'll do that by pressing the plus button. So new repository. And I'll call this tutorial BCH app. And this can be a public repo because I want everyone to be able to see and copy this code. And I don't want to initialize this repository with anything. So I'll just press create repository. And then after a second, we see these extra instructions. So we need to use this, push an existing repository from the command line. So we simply need this is to add a remote destination. So this remote destination is git@github.com, and then it's Mr. Zwets/tutorial BCH app. So we can simply copy this command. First, let's check if we have any changes that are not committed yet, and of course we do. So we want to add them all. So we do git add, and then we do git commit with a message saying 4th tutorial. And now we have committed all our changes, and if we do git branch, we can see what we are working on. So we have been working on the main branch, and then we do git remote add origin, and then we add our remote destination. And this second command is to rename our branch to main. We can run this, but it won't do anything in our case. So if we run it, we do git branch again, we see our main branch is still called main, but if it was called something else, it would now be called main. And then this last command will push our project to this origin, and the origin as we defined is our GitHub location. So we just copy paste it, git push -u origin main. And if you wait a second, or if we refresh, we will see that there's now a project here with some explanation. So this explanation is just the README file that is included here by default. So I'll edit this after the video, so it has some additional information about the tutorials. So this is also how you can add information information at the bottom of your project is by editing the README file. So now that we have the tutorial BCH app on GitHub, it's time to use Netlify to actually deploy our project. So now we want to deploy our site, so it's not only available on localhost, but on a proper website. For this, you need a Netlify account. So you can link it to your GitHub profile. And then you can simply press the add new site from and then import an existing project. And we use deploy with GitHub. So we have this pop-up saying we are authorized and we want to deploy the tutorial. So here the tutorial BCH app, and it automatically knows how to deploy. So it runs the command npm run build, and it then it configures the publish directory, which is dist. So we could also do this locally. If we go to the terminal and we use npm run build, this command would also work. And now we will see Vite is creating a bundle for production, and it's actually finished. So if we do, if we take a look at the folder structure, we see there's now a dist file, which contains the final bundle ready for production, so for distribution. So this is all correct. So we simply press deploy BCH tutorial app, and we wait a few seconds, and then it says Bright Haufia. So this is our current site name. So of course we want to change this, and then some weird letters and numbers. So site configuration, change site name. And as you can see, it will always end in .netlify.app. So it's actually a subdomain from Netlify. So we will say BCH tutorial. BCH tutorial.netlify.app will be our domain name. So if we save and we take a look, BCH tutorial.netlify.app. So this is our app, clean at the top, the header. And then 1 second later, we see the ninjas loading in. So if we try this again, and this is always dynamically showing the latest mints. So if someone mints after we check the site, this will display the recently minted ninjas, and also with the block height. So if you visit back later, you will see a different current block height. So this is very cool. This is all working, and people can now check it out at bch-tutorial.netlify.app. If you want to go even further, you can get a custom domain which ends in a .com or a .org or a .cash, and then you can link a domain and here configure another site, like configure the domain. So yeah, so that's something you can do if you want to take it even further. But this is where we will end this fourth BCH coding tutorial. I hope people got this far so they can also deploy their app on Netlify and have it live so they can share it with friends. And also the code is now available on GitHub, so at mrzwets/tutorial BCH app, and I'll be sure to update this README so you could easily copy this code by just going to this link, then to code, and then here you can simply copy it and run it with the command git clone. So if you copy this URL, go to the terminal. So let me just clear everything that's already there. And then you could run git clone and then the location. And this is how you would clone my repository. And then you have everything that's needed. And then to install the packages, which are not included by default, you run npm install or npm I for short. So then you will have everything that's needed, and you will be able to run the site simply with npm run dev. The npm run dev command, like we did before in the tutorial series. So then you will also be able to run this code on localhost. The instructions will also be posted, of course, in the README. So if this was not clear. So thank you for following along. I hope you are excited as I am to have this app live. And one last thing I will do is once the Reapers come out, I will convert this app so it will also display the Reaper NFTs which I bridged. So thank you all for following along this tutorial series, and hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.